I'm going to put him on a really rigorous regimen, and we're going to put him on a carnivore diet. I want to thank Governor Morrissey for his visionary leadership. I got to know Governor Morrissey early in the transition. We were both down in Palm Beach working on the transition in Mar-a-Lago, and we were both invited to stay during that time at Dr. Oz's house. And I got to know, I said to Dr. Morrissey, or Governor Morrissey, the first time I saw him, I said, "You look like you ate, Governor Morrissey." And there was a lot of talk about getting healthy again, and I'm very happy that he's invited me to be his personal trainer. And I am going to put him on a really rigorous regimen, and we're going to put him on a carnivore diet. We're going to make him raise your hand if you want Governor Morrissey to do a public weigh-in once a month. And then when he's lost 30 pounds, I'm going to come back to the state and do a celebration and a public weigh-in with him.
Man, how cool is that? Just to hear somebody say carnivore diet on the national scene, on national broadcast news like Forbes breaking news or anything like that. But especially to hear the HHS secretary talking about putting somebody on a carnivore diet. Man, that is so huge for getting this type of thing attention, for what it's done for people, for what it's done for me, for what it's done for thousands of you who watch my channel. I am just blown away that it's happening. It's happening, and it's just blowing me away. Because, I mean, 4 years ago when I started on a carnivore diet, I've been doing the lion diet now for over 4 years. And the lion diet is a specific ruminant meat diet that is very regimented compared to most carnivore diets. And it has just done wonders for me. I've lost over 100 pounds. I feel better. My anxiety's gone. My depression's gone. And if I get off of it, I have to go back to it because I've done a lot of damage to my body eating all the junk that's in our system these days. So to have somebody who is doing things that are going to save our children from this same cycle that we've been in, oh man, this is exciting. This is why I wanted to, Maha was my big feature of this new administration, and I'm glad to hear this.
You're welcome, Denise. You left me an open door. So anyway, we have a public health crisis in this country, and unfortunately, West Virginia is leading the way. It's the highest obesity rate of any state in our country. This year, you pulled ahead of Mississippi. It has the highest rate of chronic disease in the country. And so I'm very, very grateful to Governor Morrissey for his visionary leadership in getting West Virginia to lead the way in transitioning off of processed foods. When my uncle was president, 3% of Americans had chronic disease. We spent zero on chronic disease in this country, zero. There was no medications for it. Today, we spend $1.3 trillion on chronic disease every year. It's about 90% of our healthcare budget. And for most of my life, the Republicans and Democrats have been fighting about a healthcare plan, about treatment, really a sick care plan, about how to treat all this illness. Should it be Obamacare, the affordable health plan? Should it be public-private partnerships? Should it be a single payer? These are what the big battles that you read about on Capitol Hill. The real battle is that we're getting sicker and sicker every year. And it's really just a debate about who's going to pay the treatment.
Yep.
Nobody has been focused on how do we get ourselves less sick. And it's like moving deck chairs around on the Titanic. No matter what you do, our country is going to go bankrupt. It's now, when I was a kid, diabetes rates in children were almost zero. Juvenile diabetes, a typical pediatrician would see one case of diabetes in his lifetime over a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is pre-diabetic or diabetic. 38% of teens are now diabetic, 50% of adults. A few years ago, it's not a mystery about where this is coming from. 20 years ago, there was no diabetes in China. Today, 50% of the population is diabetic. Why is that? They built 20,000 fast food joints in China and started selling American processed food. And it is costing us, we are now paying more just for diabetes, mitochondrial dysfunction, than we are for our military. And, financially, it is bankrupting our country. We're now spending more to service our debt, and the biggest piece of that debt is coming from healthcare. We're now paying more to service it than we are for our military budget. Within about 10 years, if we continue on this trajectory, 50 cents out of every tax dollar that you pay to the federal government is going to go to servicing the debt. Within 15 years, 100%. It's not sustainable. It's existential. If you love our country, you got to take care of yourselves. President Trump said that he wants to make America healthy again.
Yeah.
He wants to make it strong again. We cannot have a strong country if we have sick citizens. President Trump says that he wants to restore the American dream.
Well, that's what I say all the time. We have got to do this not just for ourselves, but for each other, because this sickness that is spread across this country with the food that we have to eat, that is not really food. I mean, I've said this many times before. The food is not food. It just looks like food. These are food-like products. These are things that mimic what food should be. And a lot of it's just in our head. Like a lot of the foods that we think exist don't really exist. They've been created. They've been created by companies that wanted to make food that was extremely addictive. And when you look at the boxes on the aisles, when you walk down the aisle in the store, you see the ridiculous things that they come up with, like chocolate-covered pancake cereal or something like that. I mean, there's always some crazy new thing that they're trying to get your kids hooked on this junk with. And you know what's worse? This type of advertising is coming from the same minds that did all the cigarette advertising back in the day that got everybody hooked on cigarettes because doctors, 6 out of 7 doctors, picked this particular brand of cigarettes for you to smoke because they're better for you. What in the world? The cigarette companies are the ones that bought out all the food companies back in the 80s and 90s. So it's amazing what we have found ourselves in, especially when I look back into the 80s and the 90s and I think about the fitness craze that was going on. It's because everybody realized something's wrong. Something's wrong. But we didn't know what it was. And we were convinced slowly over time by being told these lies over and over about this food being okay for you, that it was okay to eat this junk and eat this junk all the time. It's one of the reasons why so many kids today need braces, because the junk food that they make is soft and mushy. It's peanut butter, applesauce. It's that kind of thing. It's stuff that's not meant to be chewed. And that's why people's teeth don't fit in their mouths. They're not getting any exercise in their jaw. They're not getting any strength built up in their jaw muscles. But when you start eating food that actually takes chewing, you start to get your jaw shape back. You know, I might still have my wisdom teeth if I didn't have them cut out when I was a teenager because I was eating this kind of garbage back in the 1970s and 1980s. Anyway, I'm just so happy to see he's doing something like he's doing.
But a person who is healthy has 1,000 dreams. A person who is sick has only one.
Oh, yeah.
And there is 60% of our country now that has only one dream, which is to get better. And we need to give them a pathway to doing that. And the pathway is through food. Food is medicine. It treats us in different ways, and it treats our health. It treats our mental health. There was a recent study that showed that when they switched the diet in prisons, that violence went down to a whole food diet. That violence went down by about 70%. When they switched the diet in juvenile detention centers, the whole food diet, violence went down 100%. There's a scientist at Harvard now who is curing schizophrenia with a carnivore diet. So the loneliness, the dispossession, the crisis that we have in mental health, in suicide, in ADD, ADHD, all of these are linked, and particularly to the dyes. It's very clear the dyes that Governor Morrissey is banning, all of them are linked in very, very strong studies to ADHD and to cancers. So we're seeing an explosion of cancers in this country. We're seeing an explosion in infertility. Teenagers today have 50% of the sperm count and 50% of the testosterone of 68-year-old men. Girls are now reaching puberty 6 years earlier than they're supposed to, between 10 and 13 years old. Other countries are not experiencing this. We've seen autism rates go from 1 in 10,000 when I was a kid, 1 in 10,000, 1 in every 36 kids today, 1 in 22 boys in California. And the obesity rates have gone up to, as I said, 50% in adults, or 70% overall obesity or overweight, from 3%. In Japan, it's still 3%, because they're not eating these foods. They have nutrition programs in the foods where they have a nutritionist in every school who's in charge of the menu, and they eat healthy foods, so they don't have these illnesses. And we, when I was a kid, we were the healthiest, most robust people in the world. And today we're the sickest. 60% of Americans, from 3% when my uncle was president, 60% today have chronic disease. And it's not happening in other countries. During COVID, we had 16% of the COVID deaths in this country. We only have 4.2% of the world's population. So we literally did worse than any country in the world. And when you ask CDC, why are Americans dying from COVID at higher rates than any place on earth when we have all the money? They said, well, it's not our fault. It's because Americans are so sick. That is their fault.
Yeah.
And we're going to change that. But they said that according to CDC, the average American who died from COVID had 3.8 chronic diseases. So they had diabetes, they had obesity, and maybe asthma, and one other thing. And it was the chronic disease really that was killing them. Healthy kids were not dying. Healthy Americans were not dying of COVID. It was a disease that attacked the sick. And that's true with all infectious diseases. If we can make ourselves, the biggest thing that we can do for pandemic preparedness is to make ourselves healthy again. We're now, 74% of American kids cannot qualify for military service because of chronic disease. So this is affecting our national security.
That was me. When I was in my mid-20s, I applied to join the Army, and they told me that I was too heavy for my age, and I was probably only 230, 235 back then. At my height, I was 302 pounds. And I always thought that I was kind of, being careful not to eat too much bad stuff. But I didn't know what bad stuff was. I didn't realize everything was bad in our food with the exception of the meat. You know, some of the vegetables were good back in the day, back before they started making them where they were available year round, and they were spraying them with all kind of stuff like glyphosate and things that make them stay fresh on the shelves longer and ripen on the way to the transportation location that they're going to. You know, so much has changed in our food system over the past 30, 40 years. It's unbelievable that so much of our food is so poisonous for our bodies. And I'm living proof of that, because I was ready to die when I was 48. And here I am, 52. I've been on a carnivore diet for 4 years, and I feel better than I ever have in my life. And when I stayed true to it, it's 100%, man. I feel like a kid again. But when I start letting anything, any of this processed stuff, it could be processed cheese even, come back into my life, it just takes me right back in the wrong direction. Heck, I ate some roast the other day that was simmering in a crock pot with carrots, because my mother-in-law was making the pot. And just having the liquid from the carrots mixed with my meat, the next day I was so foggy. It was like my whole attitude changed because of the food that I ate the previous day. And all I ate was meat, but it was soaked in that meat that had those baby carrots in it. I never would have known that had I not gotten all the poison out of my body and lowered my body's defenses to these things. Because what happens when you eat this junk, and the reason why you can eat it and it doesn't affect you immediately like it does me, is because when you eat this food, this processed garbage, your body builds up a resistance to it, just like it can build up a resistance to things like pain medicine and marijuana and stuff like that, or even alcohol. Because once you start doing marijuana, once you start drinking alcohol, the same amount doesn't get you the same high, doesn't get you the same buzz, doesn't make you feel as good. Well, the same thing happens with the food. You get a little bit of a dopamine kick from eating the foods that you think make you feel comfortable. But eventually that it needs more and more of that to get that same dopamine kick. And it's just totally addictive and causes you to get into this situation. But then once you're addicted to it, it's like it doesn't bother you to do a lot. Because as a matter of fact, you're thinking, I still don't feel satiated. Still don't feel full. So I'll eat another candy bar, or I'll eat another bowl of cereal or something like that. Whereas I've been able to purge all that stuff from my system. It makes a huge difference, because now my body's like, okay, we can calm down. Everything's cool. Everything's cool. But if I introduce any of that poison, it's like it just comes right back up again and jumps in my face and says, whoa. So when I feel that change, when I feel that brain fog come back, I got to go back and look and see what I ate and think, how did something get into my food? And a lot of times it was processed cheese. It was pork and bacon, because they're cured, and a lot of times they have sugar and other things in them. But again, I'm highly sensitive. Not everybody's going to be this sensitive to foods as I am. But it's a big deal. It's a big deal to get this poison out of our foods.
Security is destroying our economy. It is existential for this country. And we need to change it. And I am so happy that you have a visionary governor in this state, and that West Virginia is now leading the way. And I want to commend Governor Morrissey not only for his vision, but for his courage, because it's very, very hard. And for these legislatures who are pushing this bill, all of them are getting calls every day from the big soda companies, the sugar soda and the fake food companies. We're not eating food, we're eating food-like substances.
Told you.
And I'll tell you what happened. I was involved in the tobacco litigation back in the late 1980s. And the tobacco companies were, at that time, the cash richest companies in the world. But they saw the writing on the wall. They saw that the consumer base was turning against them. People were stopping smoking, and that they were being prosecuted and sued successfully. So they settled those lawsuits, but they also started shifting their resources to diversify their companies. And they went out and they bought the food companies. So by 1994, the two biggest food companies in the world were R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris, tobacco companies. They took about 10,000 scientists who were all engaged in nefarious ways to make tobacco more addictive, and they put them to work making food addictive, inventing ingredients in the laboratory that would make it do things to food. For example, they found out that food that you fill up, your brain tells you your stomach is filled, in part by counting the number of times you chew. So they started adding softeners to our food so that you wouldn't chew so much. So you'd have a sense that you're unsatisfied, that you're insatiable, that you're never full, so that you keep pouring it down your mouth. And that's just one of the many things they did. They added sodium and sugar. Sugar is as addictive as crack, and it's almost as bad for you. It kills you just as surely, it just kills you a little slower. It feeds tumors, it destroys your body, it destroys your brain. And they added more and more sugar to make us addicted to their products. And these companies are now, just like the tobacco companies were, are flooding into the offices of your state leaders and legislatures and the governor, and they're telling him he's making a big mistake. They're telling him that they're going to stop writing checks, that they're going to run people against them, that they're going to destroy their political careers. And Governor Morrissey was telling me that he met with the soda companies this week, and they said to him, you need to be educated about this. And they said, you know, food stamps is not a nutrition program. He came in with his Diet Coke, and he said, is there anything nutritious in here? And they were like, no, of course not. But food stamps is not a nutrition program. And he said it's called SNAP, Supplementary Nutrition Assistance Program. It's supposed to be nutrition. It's not supposed to be food-like substances that are actually poisoning us.
Yes.
And so, but it takes a lot of courage to stand up to these companies the same way that it did to stand up to big tobacco. But these men and women, your leaders, Governor Morrissey, is standing up for you. And we all need to stand up for ourselves and take care of ourselves. It's an act of patriotism. If you love this country, you need to start taking care of yourselves. And I want to also say this, that food companies all came and met with me 2 weeks ago. And they're scared of me, but they're more scared of Governor Morrissey. Because what they said, and the reason they said, well, tell us what you want, and we're going to do it. And they said, but stop these governors from passing these laws, because we don't want a patchwork where West Virginia and California are banning food dyes, and we have to make special products for those states. So they're terrified of this, of what you're doing. And the message that I want to give to the country today and to all the other governors is get in line behind Governor Morrissey and apply for a waiver to my agency, and we're going to give it to you. But that's the way we're going to win this.
You know, and I'm going to add real quick, even though it's almost over, you need to call your state governor's office. You need to write to your state governor's office. Go online and look that up now and let your governor know that you stand with Governor Morrissey of West Virginia, that you stand with RFK Jr. and his Make America Healthy movement again, and that you want to see them take a stand against these food companies because they are going to try to buy their influence. They're going to try to buy their way back into the system. You know, if this happened, like he said, where they took all of their money and left the tobacco industry and put it into the food industry, we don't want them to be able to weasel out and take it and put it somewhere else again, like the healthcare industry or who knows where. The bottom line is we've just got to put a stop to it. And it's going to be a hard thing to overcome because there's a lot of people out there who aren't going to resist that money. But if you're putting enough pressure on as the constituency of the governor of your state, it's going to make a big difference. It's going to make a difference. And I think you should write directly to Governor Morrissey and let him know that you stand with him and you're thankful for what he's doing, because he's the first pin. He's the first pin that the ball hits right now. So we want to be sure that he's strong enough so that the other governors can see that they need to join in with this. because they're going to see the outpouring of your love for them, and they're going to want to have some of that too. Anyway, let's finish this up.
I want to thank all of you. I want to thank the Maha moms who got me into this office, and President Trump, who's given me free rein to do anything I need to do to make America healthy again. And then I particularly want to thank Governor Morrissey and these legislators for their courage, for their vision, for their willingness to stand up to the most powerful industries in the world, to stand up for the people of West Virginia and set an example, a shining example of the rest of the country. Thank you all very much.
Absolutely. That is awesome. That is awesome. Just hearing him say that carnivore diet is what he's putting Governor Morrissey on to the whole world like that. You know, God bless Forbes for even putting this out there, because I'm sure they're risking their money from this. Because you realize how much money comes from healthcare and food for the advertising budget for these companies. If they were to lose that advertising money, it would break the hold that the lamestream media has over us, because all of that money is what keeps them in place. As a matter of fact, they're not even news anymore. They're simply machines for those industries to keep making a profit. And it's been disgusting to watch. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I've talked about this a lot. But I'm just a lone voice in the wilderness, I feel like. Now we've got the HHS secretary getting on board with a carnivore diet. And it looks like Governor Morrissey can use it, because, he's clearly gained a little bit of weight, and that's not going to be very healthy on a guy who's got the stress that a governor goes under. So I look forward to seeing what's going to happen with him. I wish I could document his journey or something like that. I may have to reach out to him. Who knows? Maybe you can tell him to reach out to me so that I can document his journey. I live a little far from West Virginia, but man, that would be something to see. I'm looking forward to seeing how Governor Morrissey does, because this is a big deal. This is a big deal. Well, anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. That gave me a charge like I haven't had in a long time, watching anybody talk about anything on the national scene, because a lot of the stuff is the same stuff. This is a whole new thing, and I'm really happy to see it, because when I realized how bad a shape I was in, the first thing I had was anger. Why was I lied to? Why was I not told these things? When I would search for nutritional answers, I found the answers that led me to the condition that made me want to kill myself. But now, people are making better choices, and these companies may not stand a chance in the face of this. Pray for RFK Jr. too, because they're going to be out gunning for him one way or another, and he's going to need all the help he can get. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate you watching this video, and if you wouldn't mind, stick around for just a moment to catch an ad from one of my sponsors, because they really help this channel be what it is, so that I can keep getting the message out there. I'll see you guys next time.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?
I'll tell you something, when I'm just getting home from work and it's late at night and I don't feel like making a whole steak, I am really glad I've got Carnivore Bar handy. This gives me something that I can munch on right when I get home, and I don't have to feel like I'm doing anything I shouldn't be doing. And how could you go wrong with these ingredients? Grass-finished beef, grass-finished tallow, Redmond real salt. Can't go wrong. Carnivore Bar. Get yours using my link and code in the description. Hey, it's Dante Ferrigno. I just wanted to thank you first of all for watching this video, but I also wanted to tell you about my merch shop. I have a link in the description for a bunch of different items I've put together for you to be able to show your support for the carnivore lifestyle, and every purchase helps me to keep doing what I'm doing here on Ferrigno Freedom.